Before the biggest match of his life, Lionel Messi laced up a pair of custom boots. On the sole of each one, written by hand, were the words, "The Last Tango." Nobody in the stadium knew what was written there. The cameras never found it, but Messi knew. And somewhere in the quiet of the MetLife dressing room before 120 minutes of football that would end in tears on the grass of New Jersey, that detail tells you everything about the weight this man was carrying into the night. What followed was not just a football match. It was the beginning of the most chaotic, most conspiratorial, most globally discussed aftermath any World Cup final has ever produced. A formal FIFA investigation, two simultaneous disciplinary probes, a red card that appeared on official systems and then vanished in real time, a post-match brawl involving players, substitutes, and a coaching staff member caught on camera striking an opposition player, wild conspiracy theories involving the FBI, an AFA president under federal investigation, a petition signed by more than 23 million people demanding Argentina be banned from the sport. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, the greatest footballer who ever lived sitting alone on the pitch in tears while his teammates were busy creating the worst disciplinary dossier in the history of the competition. This is the full story of what happened after July 19th, 2026, and it is genuinely extraordinary. Subscribe right now before we go any further, because this story has more layers than anything this channel has ever covered, and every single one of them deserves the breakdown it is going to get. Start with the match itself because you need to understand what happened on the pitch before anything that came after it makes complete sense. Spain versus Argentina. The first World Cup final between the reigning champions of Europe and the reigning champions of South America in the history of the competition. Argentina chasing back-to-back titles, something only Italy in the 1930s and Brazil in the 50s and 60s had ever achieved. Messi at 39, playing in his third World Cup final, wearing boots with the words, "The Last Tango" on the sole, trying to do something the modern era of football had decided was impossible. Spain had conceded one goal in the entire tournament. One. Their defensive structure was so complete and their pressing so suffocating that Argentina, across 120 minutes at MetLife, managed a total of 2 shots. Not 2 on target, 2 attempts. Their goalkeeper, Emiliano Martinez, made 11 saves, breaking the all-time record for saves in a World Cup final. His team still lost, because Ferran Torres, a substitute who had barely scored all tournament, met Nico Williams' headed knockdown at the near post in the 106th minute and drove it past Martinez with his left foot. 1 goal, the whole thing decided by 1 goal. But the scoreline is almost the least interesting part of what happened that night, because Argentina did not just lose the final, they dismantled every remaining piece of goodwill they had accumulated over 4 years of being world champions in the space of a few minutes after the final whistle. Enzo Fernandez was sent off in the 93rd minute of normal time. A brainless, reckless lunge through Pau Cubarsí that earned a second yellow and left his teammates playing the entire 30 minutes of extra time with 10 men, the first player dismissed in a World Cup final since 2006. From that moment, Argentina's night was already heading somewhere dark. But the darkness that followed the final whistle was something else entirely. Spain captain Rodri was jogging toward his teammates to celebrate when Nahuel Molina appeared to punch him in the stomach as he passed. Rodri stopped, turned. Molina squared up to him. Nicolas Otamendi arrived and delivered a verbal barrage accusing Rodri of crying to referees all tournament. And then Leandro Paredes arrived. He grabbed Eric Garcia by the throat, shoved him backward, then went after Gavi, forcing him to the ground with Thiago Almada joining the assault from the side. Substitutes from both benches poured onto the pitch. Scaloni sprinted between groups trying to pull his own players away from what was rapidly becoming an international incident. And then the detail that pushed everything from ugly to catastrophic. Argentina assistant coach Roberto Ayala was caught on multiple cameras approaching Dani Olmo and Eric Garcia during the chaos and apparently striking Olmo in the face, a member of the coaching staff at a World Cup final, on camera, with the footage already being distributed globally before the stadium had even finished emptying. Ayala eventually broke his silence. He said he had rushed over to separate his players and that things sometimes just happen when your heart is racing. He acknowledged that given his position, his behavior had to be different, regardless of what he received. He promised to apologize to Olmo in person. Olmo responded with more dignity than the situation probably required. He said it did not matter in the end, and that it was important to think about the values you want to convey to the world as a role model for generations of children. The contrast between those two responses tells you most of what you need to know about which side of that brawl the sport can be proud of. but the brawl was only one element of a night that kept producing new problems. When the trophy ceremony began, and Gianni Infantino, alongside U.S. President Donald Trump, who had been present in the stands, began distributing the medals and the trophy, Argentina collected their silver medals and then turned their backs as Spain received the gold. 80,000 people watching live, the whole world on television, confetti falling over a squad that was refusing to acknowledge what the team standing 10 feet away had just achieved. Scaloni, at his press conference, visibly in tears, insisted his players had shown they knew how to lose. It was, by any honest assessment, an extraordinary thing to say about a night that had included a red card for petulance, a coordinated post-match brawl, a coaching staff assault, and a trophy ceremony snub. Gary Neville called it a disgrace on live television. Alan Shearer said there was simply no place for it. Joe Hart used 2 words: disgusting behavior. These are not people who reach for extreme language without reason. When all 3 of them land in the same place independently, they are describing something that crossed a clear and obvious line. On Monday morning, FIFA confirmed it had opened a formal disciplinary investigation, appointing a prosecutor under Article 36 of its disciplinary code to examine the post-match incidents. Molina, Paredes, Almada, and Ayala are all reported to be in the frame. The investigation covers violent conduct, offensive behavior, and bringing the sport into disrepute under Article 13 of the disciplinary code, language broad enough to produce bans that apply globally across all competitions. But here is the detail that sits at the absolute center of everything FIFA now has to answer for publicly. When Paredes grabbed Garcia by the throat during the brawl, FIFA's official referee communication system briefly displayed that Paredes had been shown a red card, and then the red card disappeared, quietly removed from the system. FIFA confirmed afterward that no disciplinary action had been taken against Paredes on the field at the time, and issued a brief statement that named nobody specifically and gave no timetable for investigation. The world watched an apparent chokehold occur, watched a red card appear on official systems in real time, watched it vanish, and is now waiting for a formal investigation that FIFA has given no deadline for completing. For a tournament that had already generated formal complaints from Egypt, Belgium, Brazil, and Iran about officiating consistency, that vanishing red card is not a footnote. It is the headline that connects everything. And then, because one investigation was apparently insufficient, FIFA was already running a second simultaneous probe against Argentina before the final had even been played. After the semi-final victory over England in Atlanta, several Argentina players held up a banner on the pitch reading Las Malvinas son Argentinas. The Falklands are Argentine. The banner had been smuggled into the stadium hidden in a supporter's clothing, made from a hotel bedsheet, and painted with materials bought from a local store. Lisandro Martinez, Giovanni Lo Celso, Christian Romero, and Nicolas Otamendi were all filmed holding it up or celebrating alongside it. FIFA's regulations explicitly prohibit political statements from players and teams in official match contexts. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer endorsed calls for a formal investigation. Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey went further, demanding that the players involved be barred from the final against Spain. FIFA declined to suspend anyone before the final, but confirmed the investigation remained open. Argentina were fined 30,000 Swiss francs for displaying the same banner during a friendly against Slovenia in 2014. They paid the fine. 12 years later, on the largest stage the sport produces, they did it again. The fine clearly did not function as a deterrent. FIFA now has to decide what consequence actually changes behavior. 2 open investigations from the same tournament running simultaneously. A disciplinary dossier that is expanding rather than closing. Now the conspiracy theories, because this is where the story departs from ugly and enters genuinely extraordinary territory. Before the World Cup final kicked off at MetLife, a rumor began spreading through Argentine media and social networks that FBI agents were present at the stadium with the intention of arresting AFA President Claudio Chiqui Tapia. The rumor was reported by journalist Eduardo Feynman and subsequently picked up by La Nación and Marca, who reported that federal prosecutors and FBI agents were in the midst of an inquiry into hundreds of millions of dollars allegedly moved through banking systems connected to the AFA. The legal pressure on Tapia was real and documented regardless of what happened at the stadium. A judge had already issued a travel ban against the federation chief as part of an investigation into alleged non-payment of Social Security contributions totaling approximately 19 billion pesos, around $13 million, across 2024 and 2025. The investigation was not invented by conspiracy theorists. It was confirmed by official legal proceedings. What was not confirmed, and what became the wildfire version of the story, was the claim that FBI agents planned to enter the Argentina dressing room before the final. In the aftermath of the defeat, a video began circulating of Messi addressing his squad before the match. Captured in an intense pre-match moment, Messi was heard repeating the same instruction multiple times. "Come on, calm down. Calm down is the most important thing. Let's stay calm. Let's just think about playing, nothing else. Forget about everything." That phrase, "forget about everything," ignited the internet. One widely shared post asked what everyone in Argentine social media was already asking. Why did Messi tell his squad to forget about everything before a World Cup final? What happened in that dressing room that the squad needed to forget? Another post said the whole match felt strange from the beginning and that the video had created 1,000 doubts. The theory that spread fastest was that Messi's pre-match speech was an attempt to refocus his teammates away from the anxiety created by the reported FBI presence and the ongoing investigation into Tapia. That external legal pressure had entered the dressing room in some form, and that Messi, as captain, was trying to compartmentalize it before the players took the field. This has not been confirmed by the AFA, by any member of the squad, or by any credible source with direct knowledge of what was said in the dressing room. What can be confirmed is that Tapia was under genuine legal scrutiny, that the rumor of FBI presence at MetLife spread widely within the Argentine delegation before kickoff, and that Messi's words became the most analyzed pre-match speech in the history of the sport within hours of the final whistle. But the FBI theory was only the first thread in a considerably wider web. The second conspiracy theory is larger, more global in its reach, and has FIFA's own institutional behavior across the past 5 weeks of this tournament sitting directly beneath it. Argentine supporters, media figures, and eventually millions of people with no connection to Argentina at all began circulating the claim that the 2026 World Cup had been deliberately fixed to produce a European champion. The specific version of the theory that gained most traction alleged that FIFA president Gianni Infantino had struck a private arrangement with UEFA ensuring Spanish victory in exchange for continued European support for his re-election as FIFA president. Spain wins the tournament. Infantino secures the votes he needs. Everyone benefits, except Argentina. The online petition that followed was extraordinary in its scale. More than 23 million people signed a document demanding FIFA exclude Argentina from international competition, with the petition authors arguing that if the outcome of the World Cup was predetermined, there was no fairness in any team competing within it. 23 million signatures. That is not a fringe position. That is a global reaction of a size that forced the AFA itself to respond. AFA President Claudio Tapia, the same man at the center of the federal investigation that had produced the pre-match rumors, broke his public silence on the conspiracy theories with a formal statement. He urged fans to stop and reflect. And then he issued a warning against those being swayed by what he called lies and systematic campaigns designed to destabilize the federation. When your own federation president is publicly telling his country not to believe the conspiracy theories being spread about his federation, you know the situation has moved beyond normal post-tournament discourse. The institutional ammunition for conspiracy theories was provided, however inadvertently, by FIFA's own behavior throughout the competition. Egypt filed a formal written complaint about VAR decisions after their defeat to Argentina in the round of 16, explicitly using Messi's goal against Austria as comparative evidence of double standards. Brazil filed a letter citing inconsistent VAR application in their match against Scotland. Belgium and Iran filed separate complaints about different decisions across the group stage. Multiple broadcasters and former officials noted patterns in officiating decisions that consistently produced outcomes favorable to Argentina's continued progress. None of this proves anything was fixed. All of it created the environment in which 23 million people found the idea credible. And FIFA, whose response to legitimate questions about officiating consistency had been a combination of institutional deflection and press releases that answered the form of the question without addressing its substance, now finds itself with a conspiracy theory of unprecedented global scale on its hands and no credibility reserve remaining to draw on in response. Now the pattern, because FIFA's prosecutor is not working with a single incident, they are working with a file. After the 2022 World Cup final in Qatar, Emiliano Martinez made a lewd gesture with his Golden Glove trophy before being filmed in the dressing room during footage that circulated globally showing Argentina players mocking Kylian Mbappe. The total punishment for everything combined was a fine of approximately £18,000. No individual player sanctions, an amount described by multiple commentators at the time as pocket change relative to what the conduct deserved. Enzo Fernandez, sent off in the 2026 final, was the subject of a separate disciplinary process after posting a video of a squad chant that the French Football Federation formally condemned as racist and discriminatory following the 2024 Copa America. He apologized publicly. He played every minute of this World Cup and started the final. Martinez was banned for 2 matches during World Cup qualifying for repeating his trophy celebration. He returned and was Argentina's goalkeeper in the final, producing a record 11 saves. The 2014 Falklands banner, the 2026 Falklands banner, the 2022 lewd gesture, the 2024 racist chant, the 2026 qualifying ban, and now the brawl at a World Cup final, plus a coaching staff assault documented on multiple camera angles simultaneously. Individually, each incident has been contextualized or absorbed. Together, they constitute a pattern that Article 13 of FIFA's disciplinary code was specifically designed to address. Bringing the sport into disrepute is a charge that accumulates rather than resetting between incidents. The prosecutor now has a file that spans multiple tournaments, multiple competitions, and multiple categories of misconduct. The precedents for significant punishment exist within FIFA's own institutional history. Luis Rubiales was banned from all football for 3 years, following the forced kiss at the Women's World Cup final. Luis Suarez received a 4-month ban for biting an opponent at the 2014 World Cup, a suspension severe enough to affect the opening weeks of his club season significantly. UEFA itself banned Alvaro Morata and Rodri for a match each over a chant following the 2024 Euros. The teeth are there. The question, as always with FIFA and Argentina specifically, is whether those teeth will be used on the most commercially valuable and globally beloved team in the sport, or whether the punishment will quietly shrink to a fine they can pay from the petty cash and move on. The silence from the central figures has been its own kind of statement. Paredes posted on social media about pride, love, and the honor of representing Argentina at a World Cup. He called it the best Argentine national team in history. He said the experience had been one of the greatest of his life. The throat grab on Garcia, the assault on Gavi, the chokehold that produced a red card that subsequently disappeared from official systems were not mentioned. Not once. Not in passing. Not with even a sentence of acknowledgement. Fernandez posted about heartbreak and honor and the privilege of the shirt. The red card that left 10 players defending for 30 minutes of extra time was absent from the entire message. Romero, one of the banner holders now under active FIFA investigation, posted about hurt and commitment and the determination to start again. Beautiful, patriotic, defiant, completely silent on the investigation. You cannot investigate a thing that, according to the people who did it, never happened. Then there is Messi. And here the story takes its most human and most painful turn. He said nothing publicly about the brawl. He grieved on the pitch, alone, in a way that spoke more than any press conference statement could have. He shook hands with every Spain player before leaving the pitch, a detail Joe Hart noted specifically on live television as the one moment of genuine class Argentina produced after the whistle. He collected his silver medal. He had his photograph taken with the Ballon d'Or and the Golden Boot shortlists, earning a spot on FIFA's goal of the tournament shortlist for his long-range strike against Algeria. And then he walked away from the biggest stage the sport produces, carrying tears and the words, "The Last Tango," on the soles of his boots. Before the tournament, when asked about the 2030 World Cup, he said, "As long as I can contribute, feel good physically, and help my teammates." He never closes a door completely. He lets time decide. Reports from Argentine national team insiders suggest the federation is planning a tribute match on home soil to give him the send-off the final in New Jersey did not provide. His Inter-Miami contract runs through the 2028 MLS season. The club career has real time remaining. What happens with Argentina is a different conversation. Lamine Yamal went straight to Messi after the final whistle. 18 years old, just won the World Cup in his first major tournament, and the first thing he did was find the losing captain and console him. The image of those two together in the immediate aftermath, the player born in 2007 and the player born in 1987, the baby from the photograph and the man who had been holding him, standing together in the middle of MetLife while the confetti fell, is already one of the defining images of this World Cup and of the sport in this era. And young Pedri, who had to leave the final injured but watched the remainder from the touchline, described the moment with a simplicity that cut through everything else the night had generated. He said it was impossible not to feel something seeing Messi like that. that whatever the result, watching the greatest player in the history of the sport absorb the weight of that moment with the dignity he showed said everything about why the entire world has loved him for 20 years. The sport did not give Messi the ending he deserved on July 19, 2026. His teammates gave him something considerably worse than that, and the institution running the tournament is now deciding what accountability for that actually looks like. A petition demanding a replay of the final has already collected over 61,000 signatures. The conspiracy theories are growing rather than fading as more details emerge. The prosecutor is working through camera footage frame by frame. Argentina are facing 2 simultaneous FIFA investigations from the same tournament with a disciplinary history that makes the current file considerably harder to dismiss than previous incidents. FIFA is caught in the position it always finds itself in when Argentina are involved. Punish seriously, and you have taken action against the most globally beloved team in the sport in the immediate aftermath of what is almost certainly Messi's final World Cup appearance. The optics of that are complicated in ways FIFA's communications department will struggle to navigate. Punish lightly, as the 2022 precedent strongly suggests is the institutional default, and you confirm what 23 million petition signatories already believe, that the rules apply to everyone except Argentina, and that the institution enforcing them is either captured or indifferent. There is no clean exit from this corner. FIFA spent the entire tournament creating the environment in which the conspiracy theories became credible, then watched the aftermath of the final provide the brawl, the vanishing red card, the coaching staff assault, and the trophy ceremony snub that fed them further. The trophy went to Spain, the paperwork went to Argentina, and that vanishing red card is sitting in a file marked "Questions FIFA does not want to answer." Messi wore the Last Tango on his boots and then sat on the grass in New Jersey while his teammates tried to fight the team that had beaten them. He deserved a better ending than the one he got. He deserved better teammates in the worst moment of what is likely his final World Cup. The sport deserved a cleaner final than the one it was given. But here we are, FIFA investigating. Argentina defending themselves on 3 simultaneous fronts. The greatest player who ever played the game sitting in silence while the institution he helped make the most commercially valuable in sport figures out how to close a file that nobody inside their headquarters wanted to be dealing with in the week after the final. So here's where we actually land. Was Messi's last World Cup night stolen from him by his own teammates, or was it taken by a defensive performance from Spain so complete that Argentina were always going to end the night in frustration, regardless of what happened after the whistle? Should FIFA come down hard with real individual bans, real fines, real consequences that match the scale of what happened on camera? Or does losing a World Cup final represent sufficient punishment for a team that carried the weight of being world champions for 4 years? And the question that the entire football world is sitting with now, 6 days after the boots with the Last Tango on the sole were unlaced for the last time at a World Cup. Was that it? Was that the last time Lionel Messi wore the Albiceleste at the biggest tournament the sport produces? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me what you think FIFA does next and whether you believe it will mean anything when they do it. I read every single one. Subscribe right now because when the disciplinary verdicts land, this channel will break down every sanction the moment it is confirmed. And the Messi retirement conversation, whenever it happens, is going to need more than one video. This story is not finished, not by a long way.